Hey, you blink, I'll cut your eyelids off. Don't you blink.
I got you.
Let's go.
And welcome you once again to yet another edition here of the Mass Steel Podcast. With, of course, yours truly, Charles Prodigy Richey, right now, as we are going live right now on this edition here, as we continue to count down into the Steelers offseason right now, with some latest future considerations coming up for this team right now. A lot of them has to be with the biggest elephant in the room right now, Big Ben Roethlisberger right now, who's going to be accounting for over $21 million in salary cap debt, or about $21 million, excuse me. Yeah, actually about $22 million almost now in cap debt right now, as we continue to take a look at everything right now, expecting the cap to drop significantly to $175 million. However, I did hear Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk. There might be a reasonable fair or cap, probably about $5 million difference. It could probably be $180 million coming up, and we'll keep you posted on that as we get closer to the new league calendar year. Once again, if you guys want to follow me on social media, on Twitter and Instagram, you can definitely do so by follow me at Prodigy Richey for the Mass Steel Podcast on Twitter. It is at Mass Steel CGR, at Mass Steel Nation on Instagram. We got a lot of stuff to get into right now. Plus, too, the Pro Football Writers of America just voted their candidate who they feel like they should win NFL Defensive Player of the Year. And this is usually like a lot of national media right here. We'll get to that in just a little bit and find out how much does this affect TJ Watt's chances coming up here. Definitely pretty significant. Usually most of the recipients who have voted by PFWA have won it 24 times in the past 28 years since they've been voting the first year, which was since 1992. The only people who did win Defensive Player of the Year not being voted by PFWA was 4 players, starting with quarterback Rob Woodson. He was very first back in 1993. They had Troy Polamalu back in 2010, their strong safety. They had middle linebacker Luke Kuechly of the Carolina Panthers. And then, of course, last but not least, Aaron Donald of the LA Rams. It should be really interesting going into this right now as we take a look at. I personally feel like right now I would not be surprised if it is Aaron Donald, the way he continues to be a disruptor on teams. And usually you would like to think this is supposed to be a regular season award, but I tell you what, that lasting impression, how they performed in the playoffs, more particularly the defense, getting 0 sacks on the Browns and Baker Mayfield, especially TJ Watt right there, not coming through. I got to think that has to be pretty significant in a way to affect, because the only reason I say that, I mean, when you continue to be out in the field and affecting what you're doing, not just as an individual, but what you're contributing to your team's defensive performances, I got to believe that is a pretty significant strike at the same time. And I would like to hope, I mean, when you look at this reward that has been voted by these guys, so usually it's about like the remaining 24 recipients have won this award 86% of the time, while the other 4, the past 28 who were not voted by Pro Football Writers of America, have won this about 14% of the time. I got to believe that that's going to be very interesting as we continue to look at this, because honestly, I felt like TJ Watt did deserve it. I mean, don't forget, Teresa Barley did mention that he was one of the very few players who led the league not only in sacks, tackles for loss, but quarterback hits, along with Aaron Donald and J.J. Watt. So, I mean, it'll be really disappointing if he does not get it. But I can tell you this, if it does happen to be Aaron Donald right now, who are the top 2 favorites so far, the more than likely win this award, I got to be honest with you, I would not be too mad at that, because Aaron Donald is is one of those rare specimens in this league right now. He's got a chance to make history and join Lawrence Taylor and J.J. Watt as the 2 other people who have won the Defensive Player of the Year award 3 times in their careers. Now, that's not to say that Aaron Donald could also have a chance of winning AP MVP as well as Defensive Player of the Year at the same time. I'm not sure if that would happen, but the only two people who've done that in the history of this league was the very first recipient, Alan Page, back in 1971 as a member of the Minnesota Vikings. And then, of course, Lawrence Taylor back in 1986 when they went to go on to win Super Bowl 21 that year. I mean, when you really think about like these awards right here and how significant that is, I mean, it's very rare that you see a defense player get this. It's only been two. I mean, when you actually take a look at it in the 60-year history or the 50-year history of this award, so this will be the 50th time. I'm not saying those are going to be the odds, but who knows? I mean, maybe in the next couple of years, we might be able to see that come to fruition right now. I also like to get everyone's thoughts right now along the way. Continue to hear whispers around the league about current reigning MVP Patrick Mahomes right now, who are just not sure if he's going to be able to be cleared enough out of concussion protocol to play this game. I was hearing earlier in the day that Brett Favre made some comments on Patrick Mahomes in regards to this, was that usually, he's got to think a little bit more wiser, because it's one thing to go out there and compete for your team, but it's another thing too, where you don't want to be in a position where later on when you're up in older age, especially like your 50s, after dealing with concussions in this sport, where you feel like you're going to start having some very high nervous concerns about your health, if you're going to be able to live a little bit more, or is anything going to get worse on you? Because there's been a lot of guys who took a lot of hits and went on to go and die fairly young later in their post-NFL careers in their lives. So it's something definitely to think about right there. I don't know. I mean, we heard the encouragement by Andy Reid right there. Seems like he's doing pretty good. I mean, some people are starting to wondering how much is that just being a little bit of ignorance being shown right there, that he expects him ready to go. He's not looking out for him in his best interest. I don't think that's the case at all. But, I mean, at the same time, too, when we look at how important this concussions has been, I mean, especially exposed within the past decade, I mean, this is something I think the league and the players' union, I mean, especially the league, does not want to find themselves in trouble with the players' union. Any controversy coming up about why did you let this guy play? And that's all. I just really think right now, when you look at it here, I mean, it's a lot of significant stakes, yes. I mean, especially the only crucial thing right now is conference championship weekend coming up here. I mean, the NFL likes the ratings. I mean, as far as as someone once said earlier in the day, it's about making the bigger impact plays nowadays. It's just like in baseball. I mean, baseball, it's more the stats a lot of people like to focus on are the strikeouts and the home runs. I mean, as far as the major ones. I mean, aside from the on-base plus stats and everything else. But, I mean, the real thing is, too, at the end of the day, when you look at this, I do got to believe right now, I mean, if Patrick Mahomes is not going to be available, which I don't think is going to happen. I mean, we'll see. But remember, too, I mean, this is usually a 5-step process when people are in concussion protocol. So when they got to get rest, make sure they're clear, not only get rest, start working out, make sure they're not showing any symptoms, continue to wrap up the workouts, then get cleared by a physician, then one more final time by, a physician, usually know where to play. It's usually the 5-step process right there. So the thing is, where Patrick Mahomes has got to be careful too. When you look at, I mean, he's got to make sure there ain't no hesitation. He's got to be pretty darn sure that he's feeling okay. I mean, not just trying to just win for his team, which I would obviously, like any other NFL fan, want to see him out there compete. You don't want to see a guy be denied of this opportunity here. I mean, especially when you got a team that's looking to try and repeat as Super Bowl champions. Last thing to do it since the New England Patriots back in 2004, 03-04 right there. And you got a lot of that riding on here. You got history right here riding on. Sign this guy to a mega contract. I mean, don't forget, 4th of July weekend. it really will be interesting to see how this pans out here because I really do believe right now, I mean, this is in the best interest for the players, but I mean, as a fan, you want to see this guy out there. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. Before we get into some other Steelers highlights right now, what do you feel like right now are the chances? Do you think we'll see Patrick Mahomes play this Sunday versus Buffalo Bills? And if not, how much of a percentage do you give the Buffalo Bills of knocking off the defending Super Bowl champs, the Kansas City Chiefs, making their fifth Super Bowl appearance in their franchise? I'd like to hear your odds right there. Is it definitely a shoe-in for the Bills should they do it? Because don't forget, too, I mean, the Chiefs' defense, I mean, ain't no pushover, as we've seen in these playoffs, especially when you look at a guy, Tyrann Mathieu, who Bill Cowher's been spotlighting right there, who gave him honors as far as, like, reminds him of Troy Polamalu, who used to coach back in his coaching career. I mean, especially when he had Polamalu for the 4 seasons, in his final 4 seasons of his career. I mean, a guy who's just very ball instinctive and just knows how to be right on top of it, making plays, and his timing and his ability right there to make game-changing plays. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that too. And real quickly, what's your Super Bowl picks? What do you got? I mean, I'm going to go right now. Give me the Bills over the Chiefs. I just feel like the Bills right now got a lot riding. Even if Patrick Mahomes does get clear, I got a little question about how rusty will he be coming out of concussion protocol. I mean, there's been some times right now when he's faced the top elite talent. I mean, their victories, they've just been edging people out just barely. But, I mean, at the same time, too, I mean, they're doing what they have to do to win a game. Plus, you still got a guy like Le'Veon Bell who could still make a contribution on that Legion of Zoom offense. That's going to be the biggest question right there. How much does he factor into the game plan should Patrick Mahomes not be involved in this game? That's going to be the biggest question, I think, in my estimation right there when we look at – I mean, those are some big factors right there. And can the Bills' offense, will they – whether or not Mahomes is in this game, can they come out of the gate fast? Can they score early on this Chiefs team? Because in my opinion, when I look at this Bills team, they're a team that usually likes to start off a little bit slow out of the gate, if you ask me. And I got Brooks Willard. Yes, Patrick Mahomes should probably play. Yeah, I'm going to agree on that. I don't see why not. But then again, when you got something as serious as concussion right now, after knowing what we heard and learned over the past decade, how many stats a lot of these people who have died from this or got seriously fatal injuries post-career, this is nothing to play around with at the end of the day. So we'll find out how this looks right now. But, yeah, I definitely do feel like right now it should be a safe bet that he'll be in there. I don't see him missing this game. I mean, that's a very tough decision right now because at the end of the day, sports and like football especially is still one of the ultimate team and ultimate sacrifices that we see in here. So let's go ahead and get into some of the Steelers news we're learning today right now. Beginning number one with Gerry Dulac of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. He was reporting that Keith Butler was given a 1-year contract to return as a Steelers defense coordinator with the team. And to be honest with you, you know what? He does deserve it. Listen, I mean, I know there's been some reports coming out earlier last week that most of that defense was called by Mike Tomlin or just heavily influenced and was probably passing the message on to Keith Butler to be calling certain plays. I mean, against the Browns collapse. Because as I got to tell you, at the end of the day, when we look at where, I mean, this team, I mean, ranks, I mean, at the end of the day, when you really think about it here, I mean, think about this. Their total defense was still ranked third. They were like about second or third in points defense. Number one in sacks. I know sacks did not show up that game. But when you really look at it, too, I mean, the biggest thing, too, turnovers in that contest. I mean, when you really piece everything together by Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, you cannot have 4 turnovers, 4 picks, and expect to win games that way. It's just not going to happen that much. I mean, at the same time, too, and you know what? The Browns, I do believe they felt like they're very ultimately disrespected in that game. I mean, going into that. I mean, with some of the trash talking going on, I mean, like Shannon Sharp would say, I mean, it's a big time difference right there when you start trash talking this late in the season, and then you're about to go home. I mean, in that contest. And that is really sickening to say the least, right there. And when you truly think about it right there, I mean, besides that, I mean, in this contest too, I mean, the Cleveland Browns, I mean, within that game, when you take a look at it, I mean, aside from that, I mean, it was just a real sickening, I mean, thud to say the least. I mean, no doubt about it. I mean, basically, I mean, in that contest there, I mean, they were able to score 21 points off of 4 turnovers. I mean, in that game. I mean, when you look at it. I mean, 21 points off of 4 turnovers. I mean, when you really look at it, I mean, the defense, I mean, you can't really blame. I mean, if you really do the math at the end of the day, that's about 27 points worth in total for that contest. Obviously, we cannot go back in the past and change that. I mean, it's win or go home at the end of the day. I mean, with the playoffs just being one game at a time. But, I mean, Keith Butler, I think, definitely deserves a little more credit at the end
It's
of the
school. It's open.
I mean, at the end of the day, I mean,
It's
for
online.
right now, I mean, he's done enough.
It's traditional. It's unconventional.
It's to question how much, like a year ago, especially too, when you did not have your guy Ben Roethlisberger, who was out for at least 14 and a half games of that season, how much the defense really started to wear out because they had to grind so hard. I mean, that's the biggest thing at the end of the day. Because I really do believe right now, Keith Butler, he's definitely earned an opportunity. I mean, agree with it or disagree with it. I mean, he had 2 straight years of being like within the top 3 as far as like total takeaways as concerned. I mean, sacks. I mean, you've been leading the league in sacks for 4 consecutive years at 50 or more in the season, first time in franchise history. But I mean, at the same time, too, you also got a lot of big free agents right now. What you got to really look at, I mean, that's going to be really concerning for this team and what the Steelers do with that. I mean, at the same time, I mean, you got, once again, I mean, going into this offseason right now, about 27 unrestricted free agents. I mean, in this pool right here, with 12 of them being your starters right now. And that is going to be no lie right there as far as like what you look at. I mean, right now, I mean, the biggest bell cows here on this team as far as cap hits are going. I mean, obviously, we're already aware of Ben Roethlisberger's $41.25 million cap hit being the biggest one, followed by Stephon Tuitt right now with over 14.9, pretty much $15 million in cap hit. And then you got your guard, David DeCastro, at over $14.3 million in cap hit. Joe Hayden, 15.6. Cam Hayward at over $14.5 million right there, which is your top 5. Follow that, you also got Marquise Pouncey pretty much for about $15 million. Steven Nelson, nearly 14.5. I mean, those are pretty much the huge, biggest elephants in the room right there. I mean, when you take a look at everything, those 7 guys right there. And how much, I mean, is Kevin Colbert and Omar Khan going to do right now? I mean, convert a lot of these salaries into sign bonuses right now, stretch them out, put them towards the future cap, just to lower this year's cap. I mean, that's going to be the biggest question right now. Obviously, it starts with Ben Roethlisberger right now, and which leads me to the question right now, that we've been hearing, I mean, earlier this past week, about should the Steelers try and trade for Deshaun Watson. Now, I was hearing Arthur Moat before I went to bed last night. I mean, what they should do is that you cut Ben Roethlisberger. Remember, he's got that $41.25 million cap hit. And currently right now on the Houston Texans, for the next 5 years, as far as their cap hits go with Deshaun Watson, 2021 is going to be 15.94, 2022, 40.4, following season in 23 at 42.4, 24 at 34.7, and 2025 at $32 million right now. And that's about it. So either way, if you do happen to trade for this guy, at least for 2021 is concerned, he will be about 15.9 right there. And then you got a guy like in Ben Roethlisberger, $41.25 million. Should the Steelers decide to do away with Ben Roethlisberger, if they convince him to retire or cut him prior to June 1st, either one of those things happens, you're going to be looking at a $19 million cap saving. However, remember that $22.25 million is going to be part of your dead money where it's not going to go anywhere. They're going to still have to incur that. Plus, I mean, the near $16 million Deshaun Watson, which would be about $38 million. Now, the Houston Texans are definitely wanting multiple first-round picks. And now here's where I bite back on that and where I pump the brakes on. I'm not sure if the Steelers right now, I mean, are you going to really go for 3 straight years of not having the first-round pick, I mean, your franchise history? I mean, I understand, the logic of having a guy like Deshaun Watson. This is a quarterback-driven league. However, too, I mean, the bottom line is that at the end of the day, you're going to still have to make a huge lot of sacrifices right now, asking a lot of guys to take a lot of pay cuts, converting a lot like base salaries into their sign bonus. It's going to spread out for the length of the contract. I mean, just to make these things work. And I'm not sure how they're going to be able to do that because at the end of the day, too, you still got a big question right now with Marquise Pouncey. He's 50-50 if he's going to be retiring or not. And we don't know the status of him. Because I still believe even if you get a guy like Deshaun Watson, I mean, right now, you got James Conner right now, who is a unrestricted free agent right now. Remember, this guy was not a first-round pick. I mean, he's going to be looking for like a contract right now. And I'm not so sure the Steelers are going to want to try and maintain this guy. And if they do, I mean, what's going to be for about a 2, maybe 3-year deal? To be honest with you, because it still starts number one, the offensive line right now. I think the Steelers right now, they need to try and find a center in the draft or see if you could possibly trade for someone temporarily to help bridge that gap. Because that is a huge thing. Your center is like your catcher in baseball right there with quarterback, your pitcher. I mean, those are the 2 biggest things right there. I mean, the guys who will help assist in quarterbacking the offensive plays and pointing out blocks and also getting the snaps off properly. I mean, either comes to that. I mean, this guy was not a first-round pick. First pick. Or they didn't even get a running back. I mean, not a running back, excuse me, I already said that. An outside linebacker. Because remember, what's one of the big things we always hear is we get closer to the draft. You'll hear a lot of experts be saying, despite what you have on your draft board, you got to pay attention to the top available talent at the time you're selecting. Sometimes it's in your best interest to look into that. And which I really do feel like right now, do not be surprised if you look at a replacement for Bud Dupree. Because according to Gerry Dulac, too, I mean, who's on with Charlie Batch and Bob Pompiani on the NFL Extra Points, which are guests of Bob on that show right there. And the tender for a linebacker or edge rusher right now is going to be $15.266 million. Edge rusher, $17.309, which Gerry Dulac definitely said that was going to be definitely too expensive right there. for them to even try to afford that, I definitely totally agree because when you look at like about a year ago, where that was, last year, the 2020 season, it was over $15.8 million. So a little bit of a drop off right there. When you look at for this year, and also too, like the edge rush position, this year is going to be at $17.3 million, while last year was about 17.7. So you got a lot of things to pay attention in those respects. So I'm just not sure how they're going to be able to maintain that. Right now, you got a lot of guys, and don't forget TJ Watt. You got to better believe is going to be one of their priorities. Even our promotes was suggesting too, if it's like a first round pick and maybe either someone like a Devin Bush or a TJ Watt. Because as much as we do love TJ Watt, what he's doing for this defense, the more this guy continues to get aggressive, and very skilled and crafty with his pass rush, his playmaking ability. At the end of the day, too, TJ Watt, he's not the guy who's carrying this team. He has opportunity last year, with the pieces around him. But even when you saw him without Bud Dupree, he was definitely very limited right there. Because at the end of the day, this is still an offense-driven league. You definitely want to make sure you're putting points on the board. I don't want to give up TJ Watt, but if it does have to come down to it where you can't find someone in the draft, Ben Roethlisberger does decide to retire, you're rolling the dice right now, see what you got in Mason Rudolph. And I know there's a lot of logic right now. You play this guy for a year, see what happens. You run the risk. Even if they do get their first losing season, since 2003, which would by that point end in 18, which would end, at the end of the day, a 17-year run, not having a losing season. So I'm not sure how you would do that right there. So yeah, it's very hesitating to say, but I'd hold on to him. I'm sure you could probably haggle a little bit for this guy. I'm not sure maybe about multiple first-round picks, but maybe a first-round pick and then like a high multiple second-round picks. But I'm not sure if you're going to be doing that for this year. Do they want to make that sacrifice? I don't think so. I don't believe it. At the end of the day, too. But Ben Roethlisberger, this is like their prized possession here at the end of the day. As much as we want to say this guy's slowed down, because there's still a lot of people who really believe that this offense could still work with him as long as he's not doing all the work by himself. Give him a proper running game, which they haven't had in 3 years. And then you still continue to tweak up the offensive line, and you just continue to manage the ball the way he did. And if you got that, you still got one last good quarterback. But, our from Moses' point, too, if you're going that route, you're going more short-term. So, again, who knows if the NFL catches the break, yell on the Steelers, with the salary cap not dropping as low as $175 million. That's going to still be the biggest key into this equation here. Also, too, we got some news reported by Gerry Dulac. He also mentions, too, the reason for the delay in promoting Matt Canada to offense coordinator or naming a candidate, whoever they may be for the offense coordinator. Mike Tomlin wants to have an offensive line coach hired first. The reason for that, he wants to make sure that his O-line coach and the OC are on the same page philosophy-wise when it comes to executing the offense. I think that makes a lot of sense right there. Sean Surratt, pretty much failed miserably the last 2 seasons ever since they moved on, from Munchak. And, more particularly with the running game. It was still bad even in Bell's final year. Bell was doing fine, but they still weren't nowhere in top 10. So you got to make sure you get that corrected right there. Definitely 100% agree with that. And then last but not least right now, Dale Lolley announced, and remember I was speaking about this earlier, that PFWA, the Pro Football Writers of America, has selected Aaron Donald, not TJ Watt, as Defensive Player of the Year. So if this happens to hold true right now, this would be 25 times in the last 29 seasons a person voted by Pro Football Writers of America will go on to win the AP Defensive Player of the Year award, which will be announced on the NFL Awards ceremony the day before the Super Bowl here, which will be on February 6th on CBS, which will be the 10th annual awards ceremony. Now, remember, we had about 4 other people, 2 other Steelers right there who were not voted by PFWA and won the award. 1993, which was Rob Woodson, the very first one to do so as cornerback, and then 2010, Troy Polamalu. In 1993, here's who they selected according to PFWA. They had Bruce Smith, Sackmaster, right there in 1993. Instead, they went to Rob Woodson. 2010, they selected Clay Matthews of the Packers. As I just mentioned, that was Troy Polamalu. Robert Quinn of the then St. Louis Rams back in 2013. Instead, they went to Luke Kuechly of the Carolina Panthers. And last but not least, Calais Campbell of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and saw Aaron Donald win the first of his back-to-back Defensive Player of the Year awards. So fair or foul right now that Aaron Donald being selected by the Pro Football Writers of America right now, it hurts TJ Watt's chances of winning this award. I'm going to have to say fair for right now. Because when you really look at the end of the day, for what this guy is doing right here, for his team right there, when you look at it, let's take a look at Aaron Donald right now. When you look at all the things that have been going on, they're first in points defense. They had 296. They're also number 1 ranked total defense, giving up 4,511 yards. In that regard. And they are also 10th right now in total takeaways at 22, 14 picks, 8 interceptions. And they're also second in the league in sacks. 2 big major categories right there, when you look at it. And to be honest with you, I don't think I would have too much of a problem with that if he's able to win his third overall Defensive Player of the Year award. So if that were to happen, I won't be too salty, but I will definitely feel like TJ Watt right there. You got to be wondering, what else does this guy not do enough? And how much did the Cleveland Browns, the loss of the Cleveland Browns really affect his chances? He did miss the final game of the regular season, but I do believe with him being fresh in people's minds, watching him perform, I don't think it did him any favors personally. Last but not least, Steelers should try and trade for Deshaun Watson. I'm going to have to say foul for right now, only because you still got other things, looking right now dead in the face. You have to look at an offensive line, particularly with a guard, center, or tackle. And then a running game. You need a running game right now. The question is, can they still be able to get Najee Harris from Alabama? Only time will tell. But, those are the things you got to prioritize on right now. So that's going to do it for this edition here of the Man of Steel podcast. Once again, thank you for everybody for tuning in here. You can follow me on social media, on Twitter and Instagram, at Prodigy, at Man of Steel CGR for the Man of Steel podcast on Twitter, and at Man of Steel Nation on Instagram. As always, Leva, don't be trolling, be rolling. Here we go, sirs. Here we go. I gone.